If it's okay, can I ask a question about the homework?
Yeah, of
Um,
course. For this class or for any of the previous classes?
in general, like the way you want us to do it is just to put the name on as for the PDF, but not necessarily in the document, right?
Yeah, yeah. As long as the file is saved with your name in the drive, then you're good to go.
Awesome.
Were you guys able to open all of the documents, the presentation, activities?
I was, yeah.
Yep, okay. I'll share them here in the chat too. Hey guys.
Hey, hey.
Hi.
Hey, Hannah. What's up?
Happy Wednesday.
Hello.
Nada, you were able to join.
Yeah, I'm trying my best to stay here for as long as possible. I'm on my way to the venue, so I'll stay in the car, stay on the call, and then leave when I need to talk and then jump back in.
Okay, got it. Good luck. Kill it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're going to wait about 5 minutes for everyone to fill in the room.
Hey everyone. Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you guys.
Hello.
Likewise.
I'm going to be with you in person next week, so this is just a warm up.
Hey, Tamar. I like your back.
Everyone. I renamed myself.
Where are
What
you?
is going on with my background?
You're in a very nice office.
Oh, I thought you like went somewhere and yeah.
No, I don't even know how to change that. How do I do this? Hold on. Okay, there has to be a way. Do you guys know how to do this on Zoom?
I think so. Hold on.
View? No, that's not it.
Hello,
React-
everyone. Hi.
Captions. Fuck, do you change this?
Tamar, I think you click on more and then you click on backgrounds and effects. I think that's where it is.
Okay, more, but where's more?
Bottom
The
right.
bottom right, yeah. There should be, I'm not even seeing that.
I think if you click on next to the stop video, there's a little arrow. If you click on the arrow next to it, it's gonna ask you which background you want.
Oh, that is it. Choose virtual.
Oh, sick. Okay,
Yeah.
choose virtual background. Thanks, guys. All right, hold on. None. Ah. All right, we figured this out. Thanks, guys. Ah, feel much better.
And we're going to give everyone just a few minutes as they join the Zoom.
Hi.
Hey, Sahar.
What's up, y'all? Hello, everyone. It's Amira.
Hey, Amira. Hey, Nikisha, Mahmood.
Hey, hi everyone.
Hi, everyone. How are you
Hi.
doing?
Where are you, Nick?
Hello.
I am walking a street in Brooklyn, heading to my apartment.
Cool.
We're going to wait just one more minute and then get started. I sent everybody the presentation and also the in-class activity, if you wouldn't mind reviewing that while we're going through, and I'll be sharing my screen with the presentation. Okay, let's do it. We ready?
Yes.
Feeling
Let's
good?
go.
Yep.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for joining. Today is all about management. So some of you have experience with managers, others don't have any experience with management. But today our instructors will be going into the ins and outs of management, when to know when you need a manager, how to find a manager, negotiation for artists, and more. Our instructors are extra special and very near and dear to our hearts today. You'll be getting to know both of them very, very well over the course of this entire program. We have Tamar Kaprelian and Alex Salibian with us, who are the co-founders of Nvak Collective. And as we discussed on our kickoff call, Nvak Collective has many different arms. So we have our 501c3 nonprofit Nvak Foundation. We also have media, publishing, management, and of course, record label, Nvak Records. So Alex and Tamar are super unique in that they truly do it all. Not only are they the founders of a label and industry execs, but they're also creatives themselves. Alex Salibian is a hit record producer and songwriter whose work has amassed more than 3 billion streams. He produced Harry Styles' debut album. He's worked with a variety of artists from Young the Giant to The Head and the Heart to Elle King. Tamar is a songwriter and recording artist whose work has amassed more than 1 billion streams. She's truly an industry veteran who got started in the industry very young at the age of 14 years old and has signed 2 major label deals over the course of her career, both with Jimmy Iovine and Clive Davis, which is something that very few artists in the biz are able to say. And both of them creatively collaborate and manage all of the artists on Nvak's roster. And they'll be sharing their wisdom and insight with you all today. And we're very excited to have them. So with that, Tamar and Alex, please take it away.
Thanks, Anna.
That was such a good intro. I was going to do an intro, but don't need to do that anymore. Thanks, Anna. Do you want to share your screen so that we can?
Yes, pulling it up now.
Cool. So guys, over the course of this this presentation, what would be good is if you guys, if you have questions that come up along the way, feel free to type those questions into the chat. And what, you know, if Alex is talking, I'll kind of interrupt him and go through, you know, and ask the question, or and vice versa. If I'm speaking and Alex sees a question that's relevant, he can chime in. But we want this to be a conversation. We want you guys to ask questions along the way. Obviously, we will have time at the end. We can do, you know, an hour of Q&A if you guys want. We want to leave plenty of room for you guys to be able to get all your questions answered. I think one thing I also want you to think about is you've now had a couple lessons already. So I'm sure that this lesson will then compound other questions that you might have. And Alex and I can kind of speak on all aspects of at least the business side and the creative side, which as Hannah was saying, I think that is a kind of a unique skill set that we both bring to what we do. But, you know, if you have a question about publishing or something, or if you have a question about something that, you know, Nikisha taught you guys last week, feel free to bring it up, and we're happy to kind of walk through that and talk through that with you guys. So this presentation's an intro to artist management. If we go to the next slide, Hannah, I'll kind of go into the contents of what we're going to be discussing today. We broke this lesson into 3 sections. So in the first section, in manager overview, we'll go through is what a manager is. We'll discuss the different types of managers. It's actually a little bit more nuanced than you have one manager for something. It can be that way, but what you'll see is that there are different types of managers for different needs. We'll go through what managers do. And then lastly, we'll go into what separates a good manager from a bad one. And I think that it's really important to be able to differentiate between those things. In the second section, needing and finding a manager, will, you know, so much of needing and finding a manager first depends on an artist being very clear on their own goals, and also depends on identifying key traits that you do and do not want in a manager. So we'll go through those. And then the third section, negotiation for an artist. You know, negotiation starts with self-worth and identifying your values first and foremost. So we'll do a little exercise in that section where we'll talk about what are values that are important to you. We'll kind of narrow down your values. We'll have a discussion about that, and then we'll talk about how that plays into negotiations when, you know, when you have a contract that's given to you. I'll pass it on to Alex from here, I guess.
So I'll jump into what a manager is, but before I do, anyone that does have a manager or has worked with a manager in the past, can you just type in the chat and say yes or the number one or anything? Just type in the chat so I can see how many people have worked with a manager. Okay, we got 4. Okay, got quite a few actually. Currently have one. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Dropped them a few days ago. Congratulations.
Yeah, congrats is right.
Yeah.
Wait, so just out of curiosity, okay, cool. Can you type yes, I have one, or yes, I've had one? Like, who currently has one? You can also raise your hand so we can actually visually see.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Please, can you ask the question again? Because I missed it.
We're wondering who now. I already asked if anyone has had one in the past or has worked with one, and we got the answer. It seems like nearly, like almost a third of you have, and now we're wondering who currently has one, who's currently working with a manager. Okay, you're thinking, but in the acting field, okay. Okay, so about a third of you have worked with managers, and then okay, and then maybe less than a quarter or smaller, maybe like an eighth, have one right now. Okay, great. So let's discuss what a manager is. Just one thing that we're going to highlight throughout this whole course. A manager is your negotiator. We'll get into what that means and what negotiation means too. But that is the most important thing to remember. And a great negotiator in music has a few key traits, and it's important that they have all of these traits. So if you find someone that is just hitting 2 of them or 3 of them, then that's a red flag. So let's go through them. They need to be someone that you can trust first and foremost. They need to be someone that you can go to for anything that you need, and you need to be able to feel comfortable approaching them for anything that you need. They also need to be someone who has connections and a strong network so that they can add value to your career. And they need to be someone who advocates for you. And in simpler terms, that just means someone who's going to go out and fight for you. You should be able to understand that they're going to go out, and if there is a negotiation, they're going to fight for your best interest. Lastly, they need to be someone who can handle both the business and creative aspects of your project. And we'll get into what that looks like and how they can actually add value there. So moving on to the next one, it's a lot of responsibility. It's no mystery that the manager is one of the broadest and most diverse roles in the industry. And this leads to a lot of confusion about what they do, and then a lot of turmoil when you're working with a manager, because sometimes it's just not clear what to expect from them. So let's talk about a few of the different kinds of managers that you will find yourself interacting with in their respective swim lanes. And it's important to note, when you're just starting out, your main manager will likely have to do all of these things, but that won't always be the case. So that being said, the first and most important role is your main manager. And what you should expect of your main manager is to handle artistic and marketing strategy. So you guys learned about A&R in a previous lesson. A&R, and just to simplify it, it's the creation and distribution of your music. So your manager should help you with the A&R process. They will also help with the marketing process. And in simple terms, that's how you brand, it's how you brand and how you sell your music and how you portray it to the world. So some examples could be for the A&R process is helping you define your unique sound and pairing you with the right producers and songwriters to achieve that sound. And then determining the correct release cadence. So you've made a body of work. Do you want to release a single every 6 weeks? Do you want to release a song every week and just flood the market with your music? Why? What steps need to be taken in order to do that? On the marketing side, they can help determine how often you're posting on Instagram and TikTok. Are you doing a reel twice a week? Are you doing a stagnant post twice a week? Are you doing stories every day? What are the buckets of social content? They can also find you a stylist to help elevate your look or pair you with brands and influencers to expand your reach. So when it comes to making your music and selling your music, they're really your main partner in crime. And those two will always be the most important things. You have to make music, you have to have a clear story, and you have to know how to sell that story to the public. Once that's taken care of, and you're starting to make money, and only when you're starting to make money, you'll need a business manager. And a business manager, while a main manager has to be trustworthy, a business manager has to be extra trustworthy. And this, I remember, was a little alarming for some of our artists, but a business manager will have access to all of your accounts. They will have access.
By accounts, we mean bank accounts.
Bank
Like,
accounts.
they actually have access to.
Yeah, not your Instagram account, your bank account. They will have access to your money, and they will move that money. So they need to be extra trustworthy. They will not only collect all the money that you're owed and go out and chase that and make sure that you're getting paid, but they will also pay out your other managers, producers, songwriters, bandmates. So they need to be highly organized, and they need to be communicative with you. And you guys need to have an open relationship where you can really discuss what's coming in and what's going out. Lastly, once you're making music, you're selling the music, and your money's coming in, you're probably going to get to a point. Amira, I will respond to that in a second. That's for business manager. Okay. Well, you're going to get to the point where you're starting to play shows, and we're going to talk about this a lot, but one of the most basic things you can do as an artist, even before you have a manager, is try to get a gig every month, at least once a month. As that starts to expand and you're playing more shows, and maybe you have enough money to hire a bandmate to come along with you, you're going to need a tour manager. It is a big luxury, but they are really, really helpful to ensure that you and your musicians get to your shows on time with everything that you need. The travel and hotels are booked, fees are collected from the venues, and you're kept safe along the way while accomplishing everything you need in that process. You might have to get on phone calls with your producer. You might have to do social posts, and their job is to make your life easier. So they're highly organized as well, but I will emphasize that a tour manager is a serious, serious luxury. A lot of artists early on go on tour by themselves, and they have to call the hotel when they're on their way and make sure their room's ready. They have to book the car service. They have to call the venue and figure out their load in time and their sound check time. Like, it's not unusual that you'll have to do that stuff yourself. Before I answer the question, there's for the producers and songwriters in the room. So I spent 10 years only producing and writing records and had my own manager. And it is a different manager. If someone is a producer and songwriter manager, they will not have the same skills needed to manage an artist. And an artist manager will not have the same skills needed to just manage a producer and songwriter. Sometimes they do blend, but it's always a little bit of a red flag if someone is doing both. And I've worked with many experienced managers that have tried to do both and failed and said very passionately that is not the right thing to do. So a producer and songwriter manager will focus mainly on three things. They help get you sessions and get you in the rooms with other talented songwriters and producers, so your calendar is full and you're working. On top of that, they will link you with A&Rs at labels, so you can get in the room with artists and start to procure sessions that include budgets. So the best thing in the world as a producer and songwriter is to actually get in with an artist that's signed to a label. They have a recording budget, they have a marketing budget, so you know that the music you're making is going to get promoted. And lastly, they will help you collect fees and negotiate deal terms and pitch your music to sync and film and TV for more revenue opportunities. So while they might not deal with your accounting and taxes like a business manager, they will make sure that your deals are done right, along with an entertainment attorney, which we will also get to down the road, and make sure that you're collecting money. So let me get into these questions before we move on. So for a business manager, I'm blanking on the term, but they need to be CPA certified. And they need to have a degree, and they should probably work at a larger firm. So there are.
You should define what those things are, because that might be totally foreign. All those words might be totally foreign to them. So CPA is an accountant.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a degree that they have to take a test and pass, and they actually have a certificate for that. It isn't something you can fake. Well, if they forge it, but that's a whole other issue. We won't get into that.
Working at a larger firm, meaning like working at like a larger company. It's, it's better to have somebody who works at a bigger company than someone who like maybe does this like one-off for a handful of people.
Yes. So it could be an organization called Brooklyn, for example, and these are organizations you can look up online, and you can see how large they are. They can even see how much money they're moving, how much money they manage, the clients they have, some of them. So it is all available online, and it's just about doing the research to ensure that someone saying that they can handle your money, there is a trail proving that they know what they're doing.
One other thing I want to add to that is that, the best way of kind of vetting someone is through word of mouth, in the sense that like, you should hire someone who has, Mom, I can't, right. You should hire, sorry, my mother is in the room with me and she's talking, and it's very distracting. You want word of mouth. So if a friend has worked with this person before, have it come from a trusted source. So, if there's a business manager, this business manager's worked with Alex says, hey, Tamar, I've worked with this business manager for years. They're amazing. Talk to them. That would be someone that would be worth having a conversation with, as opposed to like someone random, potentially, who you've found this way or the other way.
I'm going to jump to Nada's question. So the main manager, the one that you start with before you get a business manager, before you get a tour manager, is in charge generally of making sure things are going well. Now, so I'm just going to give our example with our artist. We're the main managers, and our artist does have a business manager, and she did have a tour manager while on tour. Now, Tamar and I were in charge of making sure that the business manager knew what they needed to do, and that the tour manager knew what they needed to do. But it is the artist's responsibility to directly communicate with those parties and ensure on a day-to-day basis that what's happening needs to happen. So this isn't something where you as the artist have a main manager, a business manager, and a tour manager. Something isn't correct with what the business manager is paying out, or something isn't correct with what the tour manager is doing, and then you just go to your main manager and say, fix it. There needs to be open communication to each of them. And I will say that this is why it takes time to build these relationships, and why it's important to tier them out, and not just all of a sudden, okay, I'm starting as an artist, I'm going to go find my business manager and my tour manager and my main manager. It will be overwhelming. It's important to initially form that bond with your main manager and take this process very, very slowly. Going on to the next one, unclear on the difference between a main manager and an A&R. Would I need both? An A&R is
Alex, I think we go over this later.
okay. Hannah, can you just take a log?
Yeah, there are a handful of questions that that people have asked that I think that we're covering later in the
Okay.
Alex, why don't we do this? I'll read over while you're talking. I'll read over these questions, and I'll bring up the ones that I think need to be answered like timely, or I'll write in the chat saying we'll answer it later.
Okay, cool. So on this slide, then there are just a couple other things that your manager will do. So they can book your studios, hire and find musicians and producers, advocate for you, book shows, schedule interviews, develop the strategy like I'd mentioned and laid out, and then help build your team. So that does address some of the questions you guys had. The main manager is responsible for all of this stuff. But again, it is very, very important that you guys communicate with them and create clear expectations and guidelines.
One thing that I want to mention that Mona's asked is, can one manager do all these things at the same time? The answer is yes, they can. Your main manager can. But at the end of the day, the artist needs to be able to do all of these things. Like, you are your own CEO. You need to be able to own all of these roles and be able to do literally everything that's on this manager overview. Book studios, hire and find musicians and producers. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to be able to book shows. You need to be able to build your team. You need to be able to, like, everything that's on here, an artist should be able to do as well. Having a manager, having anyone else on your team is a luxury. And we'll get into later, like at what point, obviously, do you have to bring somebody in, because you just can't you can't handle the workload. This kind of goes into a question that I want to say, who was it? Hala? Am I saying her name right? I'm trying to find her. I don't know if she's on today.
Yep,
Yes,
yep.
I'm here. Hey.
Hey, during the A&R presentation, you were kind of asking, like, how does everybody get paid? Like, who gets paid what? So I think it's really important. We made a graph at the end of the presentation that'll kind of go through that, and we'll talk about all the different roles and how they get paid. But it's important to recognize that a manager usually gets paid on a commission. Commission means that they take a percentage of what you make. So your manager will take anywhere from 10 to 20% of everything you make. So if you get a publishing deal, a manager will take 10 to 20% of that. If you get if you have a large show you're doing, the manager will get a commission, will take a percentage, 10 to 20% of whatever you're making on that show. Yeah, I would say that the manager is the one person that kind of dips into your pie in that way. Alex, unless you have something that you were
Yeah, one thing came up, Tamar, that I think we forgot about, because it says gross revenue in there. And this is a red flag that I've seen managers do. And if you do have a manager and you're booking shows, let's say the show pays you $100, but in order to make that show happen, you have to pay $20 to a friend to be a bass player or guitar player. The manager should not take 10% of the $100. They take 10% of your net. So what you're left with as profit. So if someone's coming to you and saying, hey, venue's paying you $100, you owe me $10, but you really only pocketed $80, that's incorrect. They should be taking $8, not $10. Something to, yeah.
That's so important. That's such a great point. Yeah, I agree with that. Length of a contract, I think, is really, really important. And there was a scenario a couple of days ago where this guy who I know hit me up, and he said that he signed an artist, this really young artist, just starting out in Armenia, to a deal that is basically 5 years long. And I was like, wait, and he was telling me that he signed the artist this deal. And I was like, that is so unfair. Like, a contract between a manager and an artist needs to be at will, which means you can leave anytime you want. And it honestly, you shouldn't even have to sign paperwork with a manager. Like, in my opinion, it should be, obviously it's good to have paperwork with everyone, but you should feel comfortable enough to have a working relationship with your manager that's based on a handshake. I trust you, you trust me. We're in this relationship right now. I can leave a year from now. I can leave 10 years from now. I can leave 25 years from now. It's just based on trust and mutually wanting to work together and be together. But if anybody's having you sign a deal that's like, you have to stay with me for 5 years, like, red flag, run away, like, don't sign it.
Cool. Okay. So we now have gone over what a manager does and how to pay them. So we need to talk about probably the most exciting topic is what separates a good manager from a bad one. A few important points here. A manager should never separate the artist from what's happening with their project. So artists should always be involved and understand every aspect of their business, which is why it's important before you get a manager that you learn how to do the work yourself. And then once you have someone come in and help you, it doesn't mean you just forget about everything. But there's a balance here. So this does not mean that you need to be involved in every conversation. In fact, it's really important that you're not. But it does mean that you should know what conversations are happening, what those conversations are about, and why they're happening. So we can get into a simple case study that can be a good way to better understand this. There's a lot of gray area, but as once you get the logic of it, it'll start to be very clear and easy to apply. So let's say that a brand wants you to post on Instagram about their product. So they go to your manager, they say, hey, we want this artist to post about this, et cetera, et cetera. If the manager is going to under communicate, give a balanced communication, or over communicate. So in an under communicating situation, your manager gets the opportunity. They tell you, they come to you and say, hey, post this asset on Wednesday. They send over the paperwork to sign and you have to do it. At that point, you don't get to give any comments on what the asset is, what the fee is, nor why you're doing the partnership. They're just like, this is a good opportunity. You're going to make money, do it on Wednesday, and they move on. Unfortunately, this could make a potentially good thing. It doesn't mean it's a bad opportunity. It'll just make it feel really bad. And maybe it could be even better if you had some input. So it's this mentality of like, I know what I'm doing, don't ask questions. That is a big red flag. They can know what they're doing, but they should allow space for you to ask questions, and they should give you time to have input. On the other side of the spectrum, if your manager over communicates, they might ask you to join that initial call with the brand. And then they loop you into every email during which they're negotiating the process, the fee, and the assets, and constantly ask your opinion along the way. So imagine how overwhelming this would be when you're busy trying to write your next single or you're shooting content. And then you have to hop on the phone with the brand and hear them pitch the idea for the first time, instead of just getting an easy summary from your manager. And then they're going back and forth saying, no, we want $5 more on this, or $100 more, or this asset needs to be different. And you're seeing every bit of the negotiation process. That is not helpful to you. There's no point. You might as well be doing it yourself. And your manager doesn't feel trusted or is negotiating on your behalf. A balanced approach would look something like your manager taking the initial call alone. They digest the information, they summarize it, then they call you separately to explain what the partnership opportunity is, what is required of you, and why they think it's a good idea to do the work. Just to simplify it, what and why, what is happening, why is it a good idea? So this allows you space to give feedback. The manager has to digest that feedback and then privately go back to the brand and negotiate on your behalf, at which point you're not thinking about it. You're back to writing music, you're back to shooting content. So finding this balance in communication takes time and does require a lot of trust. But it is your job to understand the what and why and ask about the what and why if you're not getting it for every aspect of your business. But this does not mean, again, that you need to be involved in every conversation. You won't have the bandwidth to do that.
One other thing I want to just mention about that, about the what and the why. I think it's really important as an artist, like, listen, like, you know, me and Alex talk about this all the time, where we have some artists where we literally have to explain the why to 7 times before the artist understands why. That's okay. But at a certain point as an artist, it is your responsibility to understand, like, and you can't, you know, there are a lot of situations where, like, I feel like, you know, this sliding scale can go towards the negative when a manager or someone on your team really is doing the job and is explaining to you, but like the artist isn't necessarily digesting and ingesting and understanding the information. So that's just something to be very, very mindful of. At a certain point, if your team is giving you the proper information, if they're explaining to you what it is and why it is your responsibility to actually process that. That's something Alex and I get really frustrated with quite a bit, actually, is sometimes we just feel like we're like banging our head against the wall, even though we're doing this work, you know?
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So going over what a manager does, how they commission, difference between a good and bad manager. So when do you actually need one? How do you find one? Burning question. So it depends on a few things. As we've mentioned, it's so important that you start doing the work yourself. And this isn't for the obvious reason of like, hey, you got to move your career forward, but it's really because by doing so, you can identify the parts of the job that you like to do and those that you don't enjoy at all. And keep in mind that this process could take 6 months, it could take 2 to 3 years. But when and if you decide to seek out representation, if you've done the work, you'll have a good idea of what you bring to the table and what you need most in a partner. The reason this is important is that you need to have key measurable metrics of success when communicating with a manager. That way you can have a positive relationship with them and set them up to succeed. So by knowing what you're good at, what you like to do, understanding how these things work, understanding what you don't like to do or you're struggling with, you can go to a manager and say, I need help with X, Y, and Z. And I'll give examples of that. And that allows the manager a clear framework from which to operate and a chance at actually being a good manager for you. It also just increases the odds of finding the right management partner. I've spoken to managers that are really good at getting publishing deals. I didn't need a publishing deal. I needed someone to get me in the room with this artist that I wanted to get in with. So it's a different skill set. So a good example of goals that you can get clear on, you want to play one show per month, and you want to be able to do that in 6 months. You want to secure a publishing deal by the end of the year, or you want to get connected to a stylist and a certain producer or group of songwriters to elevate your music within the month. So note that I'm including a deadline for each goal. It's extremely important to set timelines as things do get lost over time. When you get into the work, nobody's going to be paying attention to how long it's taking, and then you'll get frustrated maybe 2 weeks into a process when you actually allotted 6 weeks for the goal to be accomplished. So doing the work, understanding what you need, what you don't need, communicating that to the manager along with a deadline is a really, really important process of starting to find the right person.
So here are like 3 obvious signs that it's time to find a manager. The first one is that you've put in the work, you've figured out your sound, you're getting some traction, and you can't manage all of the inbound attention that you're getting. You should find a manager. The second is when you realize that the business side of what you're doing is surpassing your creative side. So you're spending way more time on the business aspect of things than you are on the creative. And obviously, as an independent artist, as an artist in general, like it's going to be a balance for you to figure out how much time you spend on the business versus how much time you spend on the creative. But at the end of the day, your job, I would say, like, let's call it 70% of the job is for you to be writing, for you to be, marketing yourself, and for you to be outputting that creative. So if the business is taking way too much time, if the business is taking 70% of the time, then it's time to find a manager. The third is, you want to elevate your network. So what does that mean? Well, that means you have all these relationships and these contacts in the business, but you want to kind of go that next step. You want to meet higher executives, or you want to know people at the top places at like the streaming platforms or at brands or whatever. And so, you know, hiring a manager, bringing someone on board will help you just grow that network of yours. Okay, so how do you find one? Should we answer that question, Alex? Do you want to answer Aziz's question?
Yeah, I can type that in while you start talking about this slide.
Okay, cool. So how do you find a manager? This is a great question. So the first most important thing, in my opinion, is to network. You should be going to industry events. You should really get to know and understand your local music scene. So, you know, there's a vibrant music scene in Egypt. Like, you should know everybody in it. And, you know, if you're thinking, well, you know, maybe there aren't that many networking events that I can attend in Cairo, what I would say to that is find some virtual networking events. Thanks to COVID, so much stuff is converted over to virtual, like what we're doing right now. There are networking events that you can attend, that you can be a part of, that are virtual. So seek out those opportunities, find those opportunities to be able to network. But so much about being successful in this business is your ability to network, is your ability to meet people, and is your ability to like get people within the industry to like you and to want to help you. The second thing, research. Google is your friend. You can find all of the information online. We have phones, we have computers, we're connected in a way that we weren't 15, 20 years ago. Like, you can research and do the work. So, you know, management companies, they all have social media. They all have websites. Type it in. Find these companies. The other thing that you could do, for example, is, let's say your favorite artist is Billie Eilish, right? You type in Billie Eilish's manager. That manager's name will come up. Then that manager's, then the company that manager belongs to will come up. And then you can like go on Instagram and follow that account. Something that Brandon spoke about was personalized cold outreach. Now, I know Brandon said that he's not a fan of cold outreach, or that he's not a fan of receiving cold outreach, but I have to say, and Alex knows this about me, I am the queen of cold emails. Like, I love nothing more than sending a cold email to someone and then following up. I'll follow up for 2 years. Like, I don't care. Like, I have no shame. I will continue emailing this person once a week or once a month for 2 years until they write me back. There is something. Yes, go ahead, Alex.
I just want to say one point as to why that is a really smart thing to do. It's important to follow this guideline in music, that you don't, the answer isn't no until it's a firm no. And a lot of people in music will avoid or give kind of gray answers, and you should take that as an opportunity to pursue. So when you do cold outreach and they don't respond, that means yes. If you do a cold outreach and they reply with a vague answer, that means yes, ping me again in a week. And that's the approach Tamar has with it. Until they come back and they say, hey, I'm not interested, do not contact me again, then you can leave them alone. But don't ever feel ashamed for following up and annoying them.
Block you.
Yeah, or they block you, which is fine too. But I know for myself, I used to think, oh, I'm bothering this person, but if they don't tell you no, then it's a yes, which is a little different than other things in life. But in this one, follow your heart and keep messaging.
And that's a great point. And I would say that the key phrase here is personalized, right? Like, do your research about the person that you're emailing, find like a little piece of information about them that you personally relate to, and actually write that in the message. Also keep the messages short. And that's something that Brandon also said, like, don't write an entire essay for them. They're not going to read it. The fourth thing that I think is really, really, really important, you know, while there are so many opportunities nowadays to do things virtually, you know, Alex and I really believe that the magic happens in person. So you should be playing out, playing live. You should be doing a show once a month if you can. What ends up happening when you do that is word of mouth. Someone comes and sees you. They tell their friends come and see you the next time. Then those friends tell their friends. And then next thing you know it, you know, someone from a, you know, a big website comes and sees your show and they write about it. And then so it's like this whole web that you create. But the point there is that you have to be the person going and manifesting that for yourself by putting in the work, doing the live, doing the cold email outreaches, researching, networking. It all comes down to you making it happen for yourself. I'm done with this slide. Unless
Great.
Alex has something else to add.
No, all good. For those who are direct messaging me, just give me a second and I'll be able to get to those in a bit. Or actually, if you can, Sandra, just post a comment in the main channel instead of direct to me. And then Tamar and Hannah can take note. Okay, so.
Also, Neda has sent in, I think, an interesting question if we want to, before moving on.
Where is that? If your initial objective is to make it in the MENA market, do you think it's smart to approach a manager from outside of the region? Okay, that's very interesting. That's a great question. What we're going to say is, I mean, the way that we would answer, I think that different people would answer this question differently. And I do think that it also is dependent on what you want and what you feel comfortable with. So I'll give you an example of how we've set things up, right? Alex and I don't live in the region. The reason we're working in the region is because we both have ties to, Alex has ties to Lebanon. Both of his parents were born and raised in Lebanon. He's first generation Armenian American. My mother was born in Iraq and lived in Lebanon. My dad's side lived in Jerusalem. So like I have very personal ties to the region. You know, we wanted to start this company because of these ties that we feel to these spaces. The way we've set up our company is we have people on the ground in the regions that we're working in, helping us do the work, helping us understand what is going on in each local market. So, you know, if I were to answer this question from my perspective, it just depends on what your goals are and what you want and what your values are. Like, I think it's smart to have someone on your team that has more of a global perspective on the business, if your goal is to be a global artist. That said, you know, we would be more than happy to sign an artist that just wants to be big in the Middle East and call it a day. So it just depends on what you want personally. Alex, do you have any?
No, I think that's
like
great. And it's just about, like, you know, we work with Mahmoud here, who has expertise in the region, and we're very transparent with our artists about the value we bring being from outside of the region and why that's important. And then the work that we do to ensure that we also understand the local politics and entertainment industry and can help navigate that as well. So there isn't a one size fits all answer, basically. But again, if you start to go back to the other things we mentioned about the qualities of the manager, their responsibilities, the difference between a good and bad one, if they're checking off those items, then you can make it work if they're not from the region, and it might actually be beneficial. but every situation will be different. Okay. If you guys are seeing any other questions that you think are important to address right now, should we do that before jumping to the last section?
Sorry, what? I was reading Rola's question.
Yeah, that's what I was asking. Are there any other questions we should address now before moving on to the last section?
I would say just answering this actually on video, I think would be important. Rola, it's important to play live. Like, it doesn't matter what, whether you're playing covers or whether you're playing originals, playing live is a muscle that you need to train. And you need to do it all the time to get really good at it. And like, also your voice is like literally like something that needs to be trained. And if you don't do it all the time, it isn't as strong as it can be. So yeah, so you should be finding any and every opportunity you can get to sing whoever's songs, your songs, someone else's songs, but just going out, connecting with people, starting and building a fan base for yourself, even with your covers. Very, very important.
Two things that I agree with that, Tamar. Two things that come in that I think are worth addressing. It seems to be like everyone has aspirations to grow within. Oh, we got a feedback there. Within their community and then internationally. So, to Jury's and Tasmin's questions, would it be smart to start locally or to just shoot for the stars and go internationally based on your goals? Again, I think, and Tamar, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it really depends, and I think it's worth pursuing multiple options. And for Talia, for example, you know, we know that she needs to build a strong local community before she's able to go into the European market. But that doesn't mean we're ignoring European strategy and opportunities. At the beginning, you kind of need to try things and see where you get green lights, and then set times in which you're going to reassess and focus on what's working and maybe take things off your plate when they're not working. So I wouldn't say I'm only going to reach out to international because that's my goal, because then you're going to miss something right at your doorstep, and you might be able to grow within your community and build a fan base of 100 to 1,000 people in your city. And I wouldn't say, you know, I'm only going to be able to grow in my community and I'm going to ignore larger opportunities with international managers or labels, because then you might be holding yourself back. So it isn't as simple as doing one or the other. I think it's important to approach all if those are your goals.
And just to kind of add to that, I think that one thing I would say that the industry as a whole looks for is an artist doing the work that they're supposed to be doing in their local place. So, you know, I'm trying to think of an example of that. Like, you should try and even independent of a manager, like, be as big as you can in your local market. Like, I think that that's really important. And if you do achieve that level of, like, let's call it like that status, then it's a lot easier to approach a company that's more global and be like, yo, like, I'm already getting this many streams. Like, all my streams are coming from this place, this place, this place. Like, you know, I can book out these venues, within these cities. You know, that's impressive, you know? So I do think that it is important to establish yourself in the country that you live in. One other thing that I wanted to, Sandra asked a question of, do you have examples of working? The cold emails working for you? Like, yeah. I mean, I still do it all the time. Even Hannah knows, like, I've like, like, do you want an example? Is that what that question was?
Yeah.
What's a really, really good example of that?
There was somebody last year that you got a call with that you had literally followed up with like once a month for 2 years. You could see it on the email chain. And I'm
I
trying to,
forgot who it was with though.
yeah, who was that?
But it was a big person. Like I just don't remember who it was. It was someone high up at like a very big company. I just don't remember what it was.
Was it that guy at Apple?
It might have been Apple, or it might have been like like Steve Scher over at EA Sports, who like runs their music licensing or whatever. I like that man. I actually get like personal pleasure of emailing him like once a week, because like he literally doesn't respond, but he's so active on his socials that like I know that he's like, I know he's seeing my emails. Yeah, I mean, Steve's responded a couple times to my like 30 emails I've sent him over the last like 2 years.
Yeah, and then also the main host at Apple that does all the artists.
Oh yeah, Zane Lowe. Oh, I
Zane
love
Lowe, yeah.
emailing Zane. He's fantastic. Yeah, I've emailed that guy like 17 times, and he did jump on a call with us eventually.
Yeah.
Listen, like there's a level of kind of like that confidence and that persistence, in my opinion, that you need to be successful.
Other note there is, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to immediately get something from them, but they will know your name, which is so important, because when you do find the success for yourself and then they connect the dots, that's when magic will happen. So this is when planning for longer term goals really comes into play. Sometimes just making sure people know your name and your face is enough.
I would add to that too. I know many of you are aspiring music industry execs. You want to start your own companies. Nvak as a company, or Nvak as a foundation as well, has followed up, week to week, and been able to establish partnerships. So if you want brand partnerships, company partnerships for your collective or your label or whatever business you want to start. I know some of you have, your own art companies, you paint, you sell jewelry. If you are aspiring to establish a partnership or a brand deal, the same mentality applies for success there.
Also, oh, sorry, go ahead, Tamar.
No, go ahead, Mahmoud. But I do want Alex to answer Amal's question on video, because I think it's very important.
Yeah. I just wanted to add also in the region, in terms of like following up, and I think like you guys might know this if you have some experience in the music industry, is that not a lot of people check their emails, and people are very lazy with their emails. So you have to like just keep on pinging them, even going like DMing them, reaching out on LinkedIn, just like make sure you send that initial email and follow up, and then try to follow up in other different ways, whether you have their number, you have someone in common on social media. And that's that, even I have to do that as an A&R and as a manager, like not just working with the industry here in the region. That's unfortunately the nature of it. I'll hand it over to Alex.
Yeah. So Amal and Demo, I think to answer this question, you have to zoom out a little bit to some of the main things we're discussing around priorities, values, communication, because there is a world in which a manager who's creatively active is beneficial, and it's important to listen to their input. And if you trust them, that they don't need to give you a complete explanation of budgets. However, you guys need to be rowing the boat in the same direction. So creatively, if I were to ask you and your manager on separate calls, what is the creative vision for the project? What does it sound like? Who are 5 artists that sound like where you want to be? And what does it look like? Would you guys give the same answer? And if not, that's an issue. So getting aligned in terms of what are the priorities, what's the creative vision for the music and the marketing, what values do you guys hold? If those things are aligned, and if you guys were in separate rooms and you'd imagine it was a trial and they're trying to see, like, are you guys on the same page, or do your stories line up? Would you guys give the same answer? If the answer is yes, then let them be persistent with their creative vision and help you get it to that same goal, and let them take control of the budgets for the artistic performances so you don't have to think about it. However, if you guys are giving different answers, then that's a bigger question. Can you get aligned? And if not, then it's not the right manager. Can you trust them, and can they maybe give you an explanation of how they're doing the work for the budgets? And if everything checks off, then you don't have to inquire about that anymore. And the same thing kind of goes for managing too many artists. There are some managers that just have the ability to do so, and they're really good at it. And actually managing a lot of artists create opportunities for you. Because the larger the other artists get, the bigger the Rolodex or the network becomes, the more elevated the network becomes, and the more opportunities you're going to get. However, if you're feeling that your manager is spread thin, that the artists are not succeeding, and that you're not getting the time and attention that you need when you're doing the work that you're supposed to be doing, then that is a red flag. Is it time to ask about?
One thing that I want to add to this, and I want to give a real life example of like, to answer Amal's question, Alex. Like, I think maybe discussing like the Rosa example.
Yeah.
About us being her managers, us also being creatives. Rosa obviously being the artist. Rosa, obviously needing to steer her own ship. Right? We need, it's Alex, and it's our responsibilities it's our responsibility as the manager to steer the ship with the artist, right? However, I'll give you an example. Rosa's hit, right? Rosa's hit Snap is a song that, in our opinion, kind of has a country vibe. It's not country, but like it has, it's kind of more rootsy. It sounds a little bit more like the Lumineers. I don't know if you guys know who that band is, but like if you literally Google Lumineers and listen to their music on Spotify, Rosa's song Snap sounds like that. We wrote Snap in 2019 in one of the Nvak camps. Rosa, however, wants to sound like Sting. Like literally she like wants to put out music that sounds like a mix of Sting and Ozzy Osbourne. Okay, so those two things like don't really match. And it's been a constant discussion with her about, okay, Rosa, like, know that this is the direction that you want to go creatively. We understand that. Like, we understand that is your vision. However, you just had a hit with a song that is not in that genre. If you totally transition to this other genre, the Sting, Ozzy Osbourne thing, no one is gonna, like, it's gonna be so confusing. So there really is like strategy and like smart decision making that has to happen in order for you to be successful. Like if whatever fans you have know you as the artist that sang this one song, and you've only released one song that is like that, and then you totally switch your genre, it's not smart. And, you know, an example I think of like an artist that's really done this well recently is an Olivia Rodrigo. Like her first record, great record, like from just like pop, songwriting, sonic, from like just the sound perspective, it's great. The writing's great. It sounds great. Mwah. Her second record is not that much of a departure from her first, but it is it's not the same, right? Like you listen to it sonically and there are differences. It's like a little bit more, it's slightly more edgy, you know, but it's not, God, I mean, like she didn't make like a Courtney Love record. Like she didn't totally go to the other spectrum. So her fan base isn't confused. The people who are her fans aren't confused. That said, I'm not saying that an artist can't release different genres of music at different times. You can. You just have to be really smart about your creative shifts as an artist. And you can't make it such that the people who are your fans, like, are confused. Alex, do you think I did a decent job at explaining that? Is there
100%.
anything that?
No, that's, I mean, just to go back to the original question. Sorry, Neuron, can you mute by any chance? Is giving a little feedback. You know, that is a clear situation in which everything Tamar just said, we have said directly to Rosa. So the communication channel and the what and the why were very, very clear. We have said these things, we have explained it. This is why we're interfering creatively and saying, hey, we need to go back to this direction. It isn't just like she wants to do this and we want to do that, and we're just, you know, stepping on her toes there. So for the original question, Amal, like, if that gives any ideas as to, okay, what's the context around the creative decisions, I think that'll help you out in understanding, okay, why is your manager pushing for a certain sound that might not be aligned with what you're pushing for? Okay, I think it's time we get to the next section and then take note on some of these extra questions and get to them. Of course, Amal. So once you've identified and found a manager to work with, or even more importantly, realize that you have to manage yourself, we have to return to what a manager does, and that is negotiate. So at this point, whether you have a manager or not, if you're doing the work, you're going to eventually get offered a deal or a contract of some sort. So to the earlier question around a gig, this is where this could come up. So how do you understand the contract and ultimately make a decision to negotiate certain terms and then potentially take or pass on the deal? So I'll run through some of basic things to think about while making this decision, whether it's a big record deal, a publishing deal, or even just a small show contract for a gig at a local club. If you do have a manager or a lawyer, no matter what, always show them the contract immediately. This may sound really simple, but you'll be surprised how many artists don't do this. It's really important that if you have a team, they are aligned. So that being said, it has come to our attention that the role of an entertainment attorney does not really exist in Egypt. And this is a specific type of attorney that specializes in music contracts. So you will have to find someone to do the work for you remotely. And I can't stress enough that you cannot get a regular attorney to negotiate a music contract for you. They will not understand key points that are very unique to entertainment law, and it won't be the best support. And if you're paying them, you're going to end up in a worse situation. So in order to address this, by the end of this course, we will get you guys a list of attorneys that we're compiling that are willing to be approached remotely for pro bono work. And so we're working on putting that together. But when you get a contract, share it with your team, share it with your manager, share it with your attorney, and discuss it. The next thing to think about are your priorities and values. This is going to be really helpful in simplifying what might seem like a complex issue. So you need to know what you want in order to understand where you're willing to compromise. I'm going to get into priorities and values and compromise here in a second. And compromising is a very, very important part of succeeding in the music industry. You're not going to get what you want all the time. You're in fact going to get a very little amount of what you want. And you need to focus on what you need. So, and I'll get into wants and needs here now. So clearly outline what you're receiving from the contract versus what you're giving. Does what you're receiving align with what you want and need? Does what you're giving align with your best self and your talents? Also may sound simple, but when you get a full contract and there's the emotion of like, oh, I got this opportunity, these are things that we just naturally start to lose sight of. So what is the actual exchange that's happening? Are you getting paid a fee in order to play a show and you're giving your musical talents, but you're also getting an audience for that? How many shows have you played? How big is your band? How big is your presence on socials? You have to think of these things and then also determine how many people can the club hold? What do they fill the room every night with or without you? Okay, and then so I mentioned needs and wants. A need is non-negotiable. These are essential for your career. And a want is something that is desired or sought after. These are nice to have, but not essential. We'll do an exercise here shortly where you guys will have a chance to look at your values, your priorities, and then talk about some of your needs and wants, and then help, and we'll do some work in deciphering the difference between a need and a want, because it can get confusing at times. It does for me to this day. You want something so bad, you tell yourself it's a need, but when you really look at the situation, it's not. Lastly, be very clear about what you're willing to compromise. Everything is a negotiation, and if you're clear on your wants and needs, it'll be easier to understand when it's time to compromise on a want and stand firm on a need. And I have to say, it's important to understand again that you will never get everything you want. The key difference between someone who is successful in music and someone who isn't is their willingness to compromise intelligently. So you will likely get 2 things that you want, but the rest will be a compromise. However, if you feel like you're compromising too much and you don't get anything you want or need, remember the last point, you can always say no. It is very important to know that you can pass opportunities, but do the work first. Check your priorities, check your values, understand if this is a want or a need, determine what you're willing to compromise. If it clashes with your priorities, with your values, if it doesn't give you what you need, maybe a little bit if you want, don't be afraid to say no. So I want to give a little personal example of how I use values and priorities to make some more difficult big negotiations in my career. I started my career making albums for artists. That's just naturally what I gravitated towards. I like organizing larger projects and I like bands. So I've made the first album for an artist as big as Harry Styles, but I've also worked with mid-tier touring bands like Young, the Giant, and the Head and the Heart. And also I've worked with really tiny artists that you guys definitely never heard of, a guy named Corey Harper, for example. So when it came to negotiating the deals for each, it was a very different process. And I did sit and reflect on my priorities and values for each to make the right decision. So when I got the offer to produce the Head and the Hearts album, I had just finished working with Harry Styles. So I was on a high horse. I was like, I just did a great job, but I wasn't too excited about the band. I'd heard of them, but I wasn't really, like, this is a project I'm super passionate about. But they wanted to work with me and they're signed to Warner Records. So it was a major label gig. And I needed a follow-up project to what I had just gotten off of. And I decided that I'd do the job, but for a larger upfront fee and a good recording budget so I can try to make something special out of it. And I instructed my team to stand firm on those points, and I embraced my value of understanding my worth. So that was a value that I knew I wanted to implement here, is understand my worth. And in this situation, my value was high. And my priority was to be able to afford to live and work in Los Angeles. I just moved back to Los Angeles from London, and it's expensive to live in LA. So I was engaged and I needed to afford to live with my fiance in Los Angeles. So I was like, okay, I understand my worth and I want to live in LA. I'm going to take this job, even though I'm not as passionate about the band, but I'm going to negotiate a higher fee in order to do so. Now, on the other side, the following year, I was approached by a young artist named Corey Harper, and I had never heard of him. But when I met him and heard his music, I knew exactly how I could help. I heard how I could improve his music. And I was passionate about the project. And one of my biggest values that I've held since day one is to make music for the process of making music, not the end result. And another priority of mine was to break an artist that no one had heard of. As a producer, that's kind of the ultimate win. It's take an artist that no one's heard of and then get them their hit. So now I'm looking at a different value of mine, which is just enjoying the process of making music with someone that I really appreciate and respect, and I love their vision. And then shooting for breaking an artist that no one had heard of. So I waived my entire producer fee. I didn't make a cent on that project, and to this day, I have not made a cent on it. But it was some of the best times I've had in the studio, and I'm really proud of the work. So this is a good example of how reducing decisions down to your values and priorities can make something feel simple, even though it's complex. And it did take me years to understand the power of the values and priorities in order to implement them in these situations. Okay. Tamar's magic graph. This is where all the wisdom lies.
Well, I don't know about that, but we made it so that you can visualize all the things that we've been talking about. Because I think that this also speaks to Hala's question and a couple of the other questions that we had in the chat. It's like, how do these things all work together? Because it's confusing and there are a lot of moving parts. So I'm hoping that this graph and this visual, once we talk through it, we can give you examples too, and you know, a couple real life examples as to how these things all work together. But obviously on the very left hand side and like the section that's number one is yourself, right? Like you are the most important piece of this pie. And you have to be able to do this all by yourself. Like I'm going to keep reiterating this like for the next 6 months while we're doing this together. Like you just gotta be able to rely on yourself and be smart enough to like do this shit on your own if you need to. The second column, manager and a lawyer. In my opinion, if you have these two pieces and you have a manager that's really effing good at what they do, like you're kind of unstoppable. So sometimes you have a manager first. Well, actually, okay, I take that back. You need a lawyer before you sign anything. So I would say the lawyer is the second piece, and then the manager is the third piece. Manager gets, as we discussed earlier, 10 to 20% commission of everything. A lawyer gets 5%. So a lawyer can work two ways. A lawyer either gets 5% commission on the deals that they work on for you, or they can get paid hourly. And, you know, Alex and I have worked with different attorneys that do one or the other. What do you think, Alex? Like, is it better to get to do an hourly rate or like a percentage in your opinion?
I think early on percentage is better because you will end up paying less. However, as you get bigger and you're making more money, you have to do the math. And, you know, 5% when you're making millions of dollars is going to cost more than their hourly rate. And a lot of attorneys, especially the ones that we're compiling, that will send to you, they will do it for 5%, even though you're not making money at first. But the hope is that you stay loyal and that they have a hand in building your career and will benefit from it down the road. Yeah.
The other thing, I don't know if, did you mention this already? That we're going to put together a list of lawyers that you did mention that and I just wasn't listening. Yeah, got it. Any questions about the first column and the second column? Where am I good to move to the third?
I think good. Yeah.
Okay, cool. The third column is, okay, we have an A&R executive that belongs to a label, that works at a label. I'll go through each one separately. So how is an A&R person or how is a label paid? They're paid on the master recording. I'm pretty sure that Nikisha went through this with you guys already. Like, what is the master recording? The master recording is the actual audio that you listen to. They own, well, okay, I won't go into that, but the master recording is the audio, okay? There are 3 different types of deals that you can sign. There's 3 types of like label deals. There's what's called a distribution deal. Was this in Nikisha's lesson? Distribution deal, indie label deal, major label deal. Yeah, right? Cool. What Alex and I did is we came up with like the splits, right? So if you sign a distribution deal, usually the splits of that is that the artist keeps 80% of the revenue coming from the master recording and your distribution partner gets 20%. With an indie label deal, it's a 50-50 split. The artist usually gets paid 50% of the revenue on the master recording, and the indie label gets 50%. In a major label deal, you see that go like, oh, the artist gets 18% of the master recording revenue, and the label gets 82%. So does that make sense? So like the A&R person isn't tapping into the revenue that the manager is making. Like an A&R person isn't making revenue on a brand partnership deal that you're getting. An A&R person isn't getting revenue on a publishing deal you're signing. They are just making money. Generally, the A&R person is actually getting paid by the label. They are on salary at the label. And then the label as a whole, depending on what type of deal you sign, gets these splits that are on this sheet. Does that make sense? Does the A&R label thing make sense to you guys now?
It makes sense, Tamar. I think maybe once you go through publisher and agent, based on Amira's question, I want to talk about how the money flows through all of this. Because the question is, okay, what does the artist end up with? And it's different in all of these situations. It doesn't necessarily rely on genre, but relies on what the makeup of your team is. Because if you don't have an A&R and label, then you're going to have a different percentage at the end than if you don't have a publisher, you'll have a different percentage. If you don't have a manager, you'll have a different one. So once you run through them, I'll talk a little bit about what that can look like.
Okay, cool. Publisher, a publishing company, they get paid based on the copyright. So the actual song, like the words, that's probably the easiest way of describing it. There are two types of deals. Pretty sure Nikisha went over this with you guys. Yes, no, yes. There's an admin deal that you can sign, or there's a co-pub deal that you can sign. An admin deal, the artist gets 85% of the publishing copyright revenue. The publishing company gets 15%. In a co-publishing deal, the artist gets 75% of the revenue coming from the copyright. The publisher gets 25%. An agent, totally different piece of the pie. An agent gets 5% commission on a show that they're on shows. If let's for example, Rosa got the opportunity to go on tour with Ed Sheeran. The agent brought that opportunity to us. The agent gets 5% of every single show that she plays. Then they should. They're the ones that brought the opportunity. One thing that I want to mention is and I think Alex should go through, okay, like if an artist makes $100, like what, who gets what piece of that? It might seem like if you have lots of people on your team, you're not going to make any money, right? Like that might be kind of the instinctual place that it might be where you go from an instinct standpoint. Well, maybe I should just do this all myself so I can keep all the money. Not recommended. It is important for you to have all these pieces in order for you to function and for you to be successful. Now, that's to say you should add these pieces when it's time. But to not add it because you think that you can do it on your own, or I want to keep the 5% that the agent would make. Like, do not go into this with that mindset or with that perspective, because it's just these people they have a function and they're there for a reason. And it's normal. So Alex, you look like
I think something that came up last night, Tamar, when we were reviewing this, we're actually talking to Carissa. When an artist understands all of the points of what happens to make their career successful, it's a humbling experience. So this is why it's really, really important to start doing the work on your own before expanding your team, because you'll start to recognize how much work it takes and how much value these people have. Because if an A&R and a label are doing their job correctly, it's a full-time job for an organization. Same with a publisher, same with an agent. We're talking about teams of people working around the clock to make sure that things happen. And this is why it's so difficult to make it in music. It takes a lot of different parties with a lot of different skills working in tandem together and all rowing in the same direction. So while, yes, it's important to be cautious and be very meticulous about expanding your team, understanding what those jobs are before you hire someone else, as soon as you make that decision to bring them on, they're going to be worth that percentage that you're paying them, because there should be exponentially increasing the revenue that you're bringing in. And paying out 5% of $100 is cheaper than paying out 0% of no dollars. So even cheaper than paying out, 2% of less money or whatever it is. So I want to just talk a little bit about, let's pretend you have all of this. You've been managing yourself. You started getting traction on your records. You started growing your socials. You're playing shows every month. You got a contract in order to play another bigger gig. So you go out and you find your attorney, your remote entertainment attorney. Now you're playing more shows and a manager finds you at one of those shows, and you realize that you guys can work together in order to expand your network and get you a record deal and a publishing deal within the next year. Sign on with that manager with an at-will agreement. That manager goes out, gets you meetings with 5 different record labels, 5 different publishing groups. You talk to each of them, figure out which ones you're aligned with. And let's say you sign an indie deal with a label and a co-pub deal or an admin deal with a publisher. So you're an artist, you have a manager on I'm going to say 20% commission. You have your entertainment lawyer with a 5% commission. You're on an indie record label deal, that's a 50-50. And you're on an admin deal with a publisher. Next thing you know, you get your agent and they're taking a 5% commission. So what does $100 look like in that situation? And it all depends on where the money's coming from. So let's say you release your next single and you get $100 total from royalties on that. And that's across both what's coming from the audio recording and what's coming from the copyright. I'm not going to get into the details of how a Spotify stream splits into master and copyright. There's more math involved with that, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to say that it's 50-50. If you're making $100, $50 goes to the master, $50 goes to the publishing. So you can start to do the math really quickly. If $50 goes to the master and you have a 50-50 deal, $25 is going to come to you as an artist. I'm just going to put that in here so I don't lose my track of this. Okay. On the publisher side, there's $50 going to the copyright. You have an admin deal. So meaning you get 85% of those $50. And that is $42.50. Okay. So you're making some money there. I'm not, yes. Oh, you're muted, Tamar.
One thing that I think is important to, or the way to kind of visualize the master versus the copyright, and I'm sure Nikisha went through this with you guys, is it's like almost 200% pies. So like the master recording is 100%, the copyright is 100%. So if you have $100, if you have $100 coming to you, right, you have to immediately split that into 2, right? Half of it goes towards the master recording, then half of it goes towards the publishing. Does that make sense, guys? Because this gets really fucking confusing. You have to think of the master recording and the copyright as 200%.
It made sense to me, but yeah.
Hashtag math.
$50 copyright. Hold on, I'm typing this out so you guys can see it. 85% comes to you because of that admin deal. Total revenue. Okay, check this out. So $100 in total revenue from streaming. $50 is the master, $50 is a copyright. Of the $50 of the master, 50% is going to come to you because of the indie label deal you signed. It's a 50-50 deal. So that's $25 to you. Of the $50 copyright, 85% is going to come to you because of the admin deal. So that's $42.50. So you're going to make a total revenue of $67.50. Now, of that, 20% needs to be paid. So that's your net profit. That's after the label and the publisher took their fees. So of that, 20%, so 20% is $13.50 goes to your manager. And then 5%, I'm using a calculator, I'm not that good at math, goes to your attorney. And hold on, I'm gonna put this here so you guys can see it. Goes to your attorney. Okay, so you add those together. So you're removing $16.87, and that leaves you with $50.62. So you can see after all of that money flows, you're left with about half of what was originally made. But you had an A&R distribute the record, or a label, sorry, distribute the record and allow it to stream. You had a publisher collect the copyright revenue for you, which you can't do without them. You had a manager help you sign those deals and make sure that it is even possible. And you had an attorney draft the contracts to make sure you're safe and you're actually getting the money. So it's worth it, because then if you didn't have $50, you would have nothing in the other case. So that's an example of how that works. And you can do the math. Or if you have a major label deal and you're only getting 18%, the hope is that the major label deal can make the record make $1,000 instead of $100. So if I'm not mistaken, 18% of $1,000 is more than 50% of $100 or of the 50% share. So in another situation for touring, if you make $100 at a show, it's going to be a similar situation. That, you know, something to note is sometimes labels do take a percentage of shows. I'm not going to get into that. That is why you have an attorney look at your contract. It normally is a small amount. But let's say they're taking 10% of touring, agent is taking 5%. You guys can do the math from there. You make $100, you pay out a label and the agent, then what's left over, you pay out the percentage to manager and attorney, and it comes to you. Yeah, Tamar.
I would say that most of the time when you see that, it's when you sign with a major label versus an indie. When you sign with a major label, they will take a percentage of your merchandise. They will take a percentage of your touring. They basically take everything, like, to be totally honest, like they take a piece of everything. So I think that is really, really, really important to note in your head, is like, yes, you hope, like Alex was saying, that they're going to make you $1,000 versus $100, but
sometimes that's not the case.
Sometimes that's not the case, and you are giving a lot up to sign with a major. So you better hope that you've signed the right deal with the right major label, with the right A&R person.
Okay.
Do lawyers get a percentage on everything I get and make? No, it's just, well, I mean, if they're working on a deal with you, and like, you should kind of have your lawyer look over, you should have your lawyer look over every contract you get. So if that contract has money associated with it, then yes, the lawyer is going to get 5% of any contract that's brought to them, right?
Are there situations in which artists get money without contracts? There shouldn't be.
Yeah.
No. So you can assume when you're budgeting that they will get a percentage of everything, because you should have contracts for everything that you're getting paid for, and an attorney should look at every single contract that you have.
Okay.
Shall we move on?
Are there any more questions? Okay, cool.
All good. Okay, so everybody has this worksheet in their email inboxes, in their WhatsApp. I will send it in just a few seconds in the chat for you all to access as well. But it's the sheet of values that was sent over. Alex and Tamar, do you guys want to introduce this activity?
Yes. So earlier I had discussed values, which I can't stress enough are so important. So we're gonna look at this list, and these are, you don't have to choose from this list. If you have other values that aren't on here, please think of them. But write down 5, then look at those 5, narrow it down to 3, then narrow it down to 2 most important things through which you can view all of the other decisions that you make. So the 2 that I had mentioned is knowing my worth and making music for the sake of making music. And those were the values that I used when I was dealing with a negotiation and a big career decision. Anything to add or any questions?
Are we all able to open up that value sheet? I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes for you guys to run through the sheet. You can highlight your values. Again, to edit the sheet, please make a copy. You can write them down on paper, whatever works best for you. We should all have access to that, and I will send it in the chat now. And I'm setting my timer for 10 minutes.
I will be right back.
Sahar, are you confused as to what you should be doing?
So just so I could understand well, we're choosing 5 values that we stand by, right? And then we're like choosing the most important, 3 most important ones.
Yep. So you're choosing your top 5 values out of that sheet. You can also write in your own values. Then from your top 5, you're narrowing it down to your most important 2. And these 2 are
And do you want me, and do you want us to send the sheet, like take a picture and send it? I don't understand.
yeah.
Okay.
So you will,
Okay, through the WhatsApp group.
or to the Google Drive, and I'll send the Google Drive after class to the WhatsApp.
So
Okay.
we send the picture on WhatsApp or the Google Drive, we upload it on, or both.
Upload it to the Google Drive only.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. It'll get a little bit hectic with 40 sheets in the WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And the Google Drive was sent to your emails yesterday, but I will send it again to the WhatsApp right after class. And Demo, where to answer, make a copy of the sheet so that you can edit it. You go to File, Make a Copy.
I'm not sure why, but when it asks to make a copy, it sends it to our own drive. So I'm finishing the sheet and then I'll try to move it to the right place after. So for anyone that doesn't know how to do that, you just go back to the docs after you make it from file, make a copy, and then you will go back to your docs and you will see all of your documents. Pick that copy and move it. Right click and move it to the drive that is sent to the email, which is going to be on WhatsApp now.
Thanks, Hala.
Dang it. They gotta be two, huh?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Five and then
I
2.
can't just like choose 10 or 20 and just pass them. I stand by a lot of things here.
Alex, I think we should start off with what our 2 values would be. And then we can
For
have
sure.
some people raise their hands as to
Yeah, I can talk a little bit
for their-
more. The two I use in my example are definitely the ones I've lived by, so I can talk a bit more about that, and I'm very curious to hear what yours are.
Oh, mine.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you think mine are?
Oh my God, that's that. Okay, I'm gonna need the rest of the time that everyone else has to figure that out.
Clock is ticking, 4 minutes left.
Okay. Oh, hi, Sivan.
This is my baby.
The newest student.
Uh-huh. Super awesome.
It's cute.
Ladies, I also found an easier way. Once you make your copy in the file, and when you're in the document, just click File, Move, and then press All Locations, Shared with Me. And then you will find the first one, which is Intro to Management, November 8th, and just click Move there, because it took me time to find how to move.
I just downloaded a PDF and uploaded it again to the link of the
Yeah,
drive.
that can work too.
Also, my timer went off. Are we all ready?
Yes.
Okay, Alex, Tamar, are you guys ready?
So mine were, like I had mentioned, making music for the sake of making music. So enjoying the journey, which is a fantastic reminder in this industry that it is really about the process. And when you get really committed to the process and learn to love the process, that's when magic happens. But when you're fixated on a certain result, it's kind of like thinking you know better than you do. And in this industry, you never really know. Like it's so much of it relies on the universe and energy and things lining up. So every time I've fixated on a certain result, I've held myself back from other more important things happening. And then the second one I had was knowing my worth. And I'm just by nature a people pleaser and kind of see other people's worth more than mine. So it was really early on where I realized that the people that got ahead in this industry understood their value and were not ashamed to be able to show up with strength and saying, I know what I'm worth. Every producer mentor I've had that has Grammys and hit records, they walk in the room and they know how valuable they are. And they had that attitude even before they had their hit record. And that's really important. So with those two, I'm able to then, kind of build a tree of other things that are important to me. So those are my two. Tamar, I can't guess both of yours, but I think one of them might be to do what you say you're going to do. Maybe it's not the one you had chosen, but I know that's an important value for you. So I'll let you take over.
That's actually good. That's a good guess. Mine are truth and trust, actually. And I guess truth goes into like doing what you're saying you're gonna do. I think it's really, really, really important to be honest with just be an honest person, like with yourself, with your team, with people that work for you, the people you work with. You have to be truthful when it comes to your art. Like if you're making art that's not truthful, no one's gonna relate. The more truthful you can be to yourself, and the more it just kind of permeates and bleeds into everything. So so that's really important. And then with truth, also trust. Like, I don't know, it's I don't really know what to say to that aside from like, that's really important value.
Just to add to yours, Tamar, with the truth aspect, an artist's job is to understand their truth and dig deep into that so they can share it with the world in a story fashion so other people can see it in themselves. So for an artist in particular, truth is the most important thing. And that doesn't mean not lying to someone. Yes, of course, that's part of it, but it means being honest with yourself and then being willing to share that honesty with the world. And that is the difference between an artist and a normal person that is not an artist. And that's why it takes so much courage to be an artist. And then for the trust aspect, Tamar, like you are forced to trust in order to do this job. Everyone we just mentioned that is taking a piece of the revenue that you're making, you have to trust. So learning how to trust is paramount. Otherwise, you are not going to get anywhere. If you constantly think, yeah, you're not going to, you can't get through this alone. You can start it alone, and it is important that you create the sparks along the way. But to turn that spark into a fire and to turn that fire into a full forest fire, maybe, I don't know, pour fuel on it and make it huge, you need a team of people. But yeah, those are really good, Tamar, and those apply to so many aspects of what we've gone through.
Yeah, and I think the trust thing is kind of dual in the sense that like you can't be stupid and trust blindly. Like there are a lot of bad fucking people in this business, like a lot. I would say that there are more bad people in this business than good people. So you can't just be like, I trust like you can't be naive and just be like, I trust everyone and whatever. Like, but if you are so untrustworthy, like if you are so, if you are so unable to trust people and thereby unable to bring people into your team that you trust, you will self-sabotage and you will not make it in this business.
Do we want to go through a couple other pairings? Hannah, do you want to choose some? Or how do we want to do this? Yeah.
I can call some names. I actually have Juju as my first. Jory, do you want to share your two?
Yeah, it was pretty hard because I wanted to pick 10. And I really couldn't pick two after all. Like I picked around 3 or 4. So
That's
my
fine. We can
first
help
would be
you.
authenticity.
Oh, sorry. I was saying share the main ones and we can help you kind of work through them and narrow them down, which could be a good exercise because I'm sure other people felt the same way.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I would start with authenticity just to like correlate what you guys said. I don't think music can be music until you make it as authentic as you can. Like writing music, I have to express a part of myself doing that. I have to be as me as much as I can, bring all of that weirdness out. And that was the addition I put into that worksheet. Like bring out your utmost weirdness. That's also a value I stand by very strongly. Second would be making a difference, because like I feel like there isn't much diversity in music because people love artists, of course, and they're gonna try to cover them or make similar art like them. And what really brings out a name right now is being as unique as possible. So like making that difference in the music map or the music scene. And also dignity, because authenticity like doesn't go really well without your self-worth, as Alex mentioned. Like I feel like dignity has to come hand in hand with it, so it could actually work, right?
Great. Was there another one or those were the main?
Curiosity and integrity, but I feel like integrity and dignity kind of like synonym themselves out. So curiosity is definitely a thing for me. It had given me that idea of, wow, there's a lot of different aspects to music, just because I was curious enough to research after it and go after it and do all these things.
Curiosity is a very good one and probably one we should focus on. You cannot stop being curious. If you ever find yourself thinking you know everything or that you're not interested to learn more, you got to take a breather and reset. Yeah. What was that? Sure.
I thought like you're gonna be like minimizing yourself somewhere. You're just gonna like put yourself on another level. Just stay there. If you're curious enough, I think you'll like keep on going up the stairs trying to find out where's the door, where's the end of it.
So an interesting thing here so authenticity and curiosity to me feel like the values that you can take into negotiation and deals. And then making a difference in dignity can be the values you take into your art. So to me, those would be things that would fit on a marketing sheet for you and would dictate how are you communicating with your fans, what message is embedded into your lyrics, what you're talking about at your shows, and what brand you're selling to the public. So making a difference in dignity, to me, those are messages that people really need to hear and can hear in your art. And then when it comes to how you're running your business with, is your manager also curious? Is your A&R or publisher also curious? Those are things that you can vet and see, like when you're trying to decide, is this manager right for me? Do they have the same values? Are they curious like I am? And that's really important. And then are they authentic? Are they truthful? So those would be the two I would use when it comes to business. And then the other two I would put in marketing, and you would be able to use those as a guiding light. Let's jump to another. Really, really good though. Thank you for sharing.
All right. Yasmin? Yasso?
Is that me? Hi, you know my full name? Oh, because I have it. Yes, so here. So a really important one for me is faith, because you need to be like a little crazy to really believe in the vision you have, because a lot of people will not believe in it as much as you believe in it, and there are gonna be a lot of hard days in that journey. So I believe faith in my journey got me out of a lot of dark places. Just because I had like, I was like, oh, Yasmina, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. Have faith. It worked before. It's gonna work now. That's one. Another one, as a child, people always used to tell me that I'm bossy, or that that I have this, yeah, that I'm bossy, and I never believed that. And I always believed that I had good leadership skills, and I thank God that I believed that, because now I can work with it in different stuff, especially in this industry, because a lot of people try to take advantage of you, and you need to have this skill of knowing your worth, as they said, and knowing what you want from them and what you're gonna offer to them, and really knowing that what you're gonna offer to them is something that's gonna contribute into a bigger project. And because a lot of people change like their vision. For example, producers, if you work together and a song doesn't do well, they're gonna be like, but add my name here, but I need more money, or something like that. So you need to be really strict with your skills in leading a whole thing. That's the two things that I.
That's great. So faith, being a little crazy, and leading and being, I mean, boss is like Hannah said, like that is a gender construct. That's something that's difficult in this industry. And Tamar and I deal with this a lot. Sometimes, unfortunately, in the music industry, like I say the exact same thing she does, and then it's received entirely different because I'm a guy. And that is stuff that we run into often, but it's important to hold true to that, and to stand your ground, and you know what you want. Those are really good. And I think the way I would apply that, by the way, to a contract situation, because I want to continue to apply this to like, okay, how can you use these values to help you? The thing that comes to mind with faith and the determination and leadership is also having faith that things are going to work out if you do the work. So when you're looking at a contract, remembering that you can say no if your priorities and your values don't line up to it, and having faith that you can continue to work towards the next step will allow you to let go a little bit, and compromise where needed, and also say no where needed. So it's an interesting blend of being very resolute on what's important to you, but also understanding that compromise is important. And I found that faith is the number one way to be able to navigate that while retaining mental health through it, or else you're going to get really bogged down by the challenges. So those are really good. Thank you for sharing.
One other thing I want to add is that it's so interesting, this concept of like bossy, right? It's such an interesting word, because I feel like I'm trying not to make generalizations here, but like, I don't really know how to say this without making a generalization, is like, when a man is bossy, they're strong. But when a woman's bossy, she's a bitch. And like, I think that it's, I think it's cool to be strong. I think it's cool to be outspoken. And I think it's cool to be empowered. I don't know how else to say that. And you being bossy and you saying how you feel and you saying, and you being strong in that. I don't think that makes you a bitch. I just think that makes you badass. So that's that.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Tina?
That's me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so I found a lot of the values very aligned with my personality, so I try to narrow it down as much as I can. So I found like I think that values for me as a person would change as my career grows. Like at different times of my career, I would have different priorities and therefore different values, or I would prioritize my values then differently. For example, right now, as an independent artist who's just starting out, I think the three most important values I should have would be financial stability, fun, and ambition. Financial stability because I'm just starting this out and I don't have like a day job or anything, so I need this to generate some kind of money for me. And fun because I'm doing this because I love music. This is what I want my career to be, even though I studied business and something completely different, but I love music. This is what I want to do, and it has to be fun for me. And lastly, ambition, because like along the way, you're your biggest cheerleader. You have to just believe in yourself and believe in what you do and your talent in order to get where you want to get.
Love it. That's really good. And again, those are important things that if you get to the place where you're hitting one of those three metrics that Tamar mentioned, when it's time to find a manager or you get approached with a deal, you know, financial stability being important for you is a factor in how you negotiate that, and also in how you communicate with that potential manager and understand that they can bring that to the table and find revenue generating opportunities for you, which might be different from someone else who gets a manager to help them with the A&R and marketing process. It's different. So you can see how this starts to become very, very specific to every artist and every potential team member they bring on.
Thank
Those
you.
are great. Yeah, thanks for
Gina,
sharing.
I do want to mention something because I do think that this is important just to think about. Like, it takes a while to become financially stable as an artist. And I think that that's something like it can take years. So, and Alex, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but like that I would say is like sometimes you need to work a couple jobs in addition to making music to be able to afford to make music.
Yeah. Yes. I would add to that, like, there's so many ways you can approach your art and generating revenue from it. But what you could use help with sometimes is writing out, okay, what are the direct opportunities that you can control and go out and pursue and generate revenue from? Does that meet your needs? If not, what can you do with the extra time that does bring in that revenue if financial stability is important to you? And some of the biggest artists in the world were working multiple jobs until they got that big break. And sometimes creatively, it's actually beneficial to your art to put yourself in situations where you're not holding that artist persona, and you're able to interact with a new environment. And so if financial stability is a very core value, then yes, work towards finding the partners that can get you that, but also look at your schedule, the amount of time you have, and figure out maybe simpler ways of achieving that stability that allows you to be more open when you are writing. Because if you're writing and you're thinking about money, that's not going to create the best art. However, when you're negotiating that contract and you know that you want to get a certain amount for it, you know, that's good to think about as well. The other side of the coin, though, is if you're pulling in revenue from a side job and the money isn't as important, you might be able to compromise in a way that'll get you that gig, that'll get you that next thing. So it is really all balance and building your whole life around your values and then applying them to specific decisions when it comes to music.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Angie?
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
It was hard actually to pick two. So the most important for me was self-expression, because like basically I don't read minds, so you have to express yourself so I can understand what's in here, or you have to communicate. Communication skills is very important. Also finding fun in what I do, because sometimes um when things get like when you get to a certain routine, things get like you get bored a lot, so you have to like find the fun in what you do, so like you can like break that boredom. Also self-respect is important to me, and kindness and harmony, because I worked with someone who was like not unkind, but like I don't know how to say it, like stiff or like aggressive, you know what I mean? So I guess the aggressiveness of this person like pushed people away from him, even though he was like a really smart person and good at what he does. But like maybe because he was a little bit aggressive with people, that's why people like was like trying to be away from him. So it's important for me to be kind, actually.
So self-expression, fun, self-respect, kindness, harmony. Another thing, I had just mentioned this, but it was how some of these values can contribute to your art. And then somehow some of these values can contribute to the way you make business decisions. And from what I'm hearing, a lot of this messaging could be something that you write about and that you portray in your artistry or in the lyrics of what you're working on, or if you're producing in the way that you communicate with the artists that you're in the room with, and the way you communicate with any other partners. And it's a way to hold yourself when you're dealing with all of these different people that are going to come into the mix. And I know people that have similar values, and every time I jump in the room with them, they are expressing themselves, they're having fun, they respect themselves, so therefore they respect you. And that's where the kindness and harmony comes from, and magic starts to happen because it's such a good energy. And sometimes just holding great energy does allow special things to happen. In music, we're operating in this weird place it's very regimented and businesslike, but it's also in this space where you're channeling things and there's things we can't explain. So understanding your energy and holding yourself true to that is very, very powerful. Thank you for sharing.
And Tamar and Alex, just let me know when you guys, I know we have a Q&A slated for after this, so just let me know when you guys would like to move forward. But otherwise,
A couple more.
Okay, sweet. Martina.
Wow, I didn't know it was my turn because everyone raised their hand. So I agree with Inji regarding the self-expression, and many other people mentioned about the importance of self-expression. I feel like I can never sing or make music about something that I don't believe in. I was actually surprised that I didn't add fun. I wish I added it because I always feel like I treat music, like it's a discipline. I should always wake up, make music before going to work, and it's more of a rigid habit that I have instead of getting lost and actually making music. So I wish I work on that later on. And also personal fulfillment. I feel like I spend money, I spend a lot of time making music, so I feel like at the end I do that in order to feel fulfilled at the end. So that's it.
Love it. So self-expression, fun, and personal fulfillment. Correct? Did I get that right?
Not fun. I wish I could include fun even more than it's more of let's make music instead of feeling anxious. Oh my God, I'm gonna start a new
Yeah.
session, and I feel like it's bad, and I feel self-doubt.
I would then push you to probably adopt something similar to mine, which is to enjoy the process of making music simply for the process of making music, because that does relieve the pressure of, I make crap music all the time, and that's part of it. Like for every 100 songs you write, you're going to write one good one most of the time. And the best writers work like that. And that's something we can get to in another conversation, but you're dealing with failure on a daily basis as an artist and a songwriter and a producer. Every day you're going to make something that's not quite good enough. So coming to terms with that and enjoying the process of that and letting the magic happen is an important thing to remember.
Yeah, but it's actually it gets confusing when actually to release the bad thing you produce or to keep it at bay. So I feel like it's always important to release.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. This is where good team members, A&Rs, or what Tamar and I were just talking about this, just sharing it with people, friends, and getting honest reactions is so valuable. And being willing to, if someone reacts and they say, oh, it's good, but you realize that they didn't really quite get passionate about it, that's fine. I can't tell you the amount of stuff I've played people and they've kind of been like, okay, and then they change the subject. I'm like, oh, they don't say they don't like it. They'll never say they don't like it. That's another thing. But you got to kind of read between the lines, which is tough because you're digging to understand if they actually do like it or not.
Yeah, I agree.
Sahar, do you want to go next?
Hi. Can you hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I just discovered that there is joy and fun in the values, and I was wondering, like, okay, so what is the difference between them? And I think I'll pick joy because joy, I feel like it's more related to your you as a being or infinite being, and it's more like a state of being. So I think I would pick joy. Enjoy the process and let it be a part of you. And I think I would also definitely choose making a difference through my art, my music. Always having this idea of always having a message. There was also the option of future generations, which really I felt like I really feel a connection to this specifically as an individual, and just feel like have a responsibility for the future generations for some reason, and making a difference as for being who I am as a human being and pursuing my true self, being also authentic and having that capability to self-express myself and influence, be a good influence on the planet, I think. And of course, I relate to a lot of stuff and a lot of values, but it just like I think like I had to choose two, so those were the ones that
So
I felt connected to.
joy, making a difference, thinking about future
Yeah.
generations, and then authenticity and self-expression. And
Yeah.
those, I mean, it's good to see these coming back up because they're extremely important. One thing that came to mind when you mentioned joy versus fun, if we haven't made it entirely clear yet, this process is extremely difficult and takes a lot of hard work and determination. And we have found that the only way to be able to keep up with that is that you're instilling joy in the process of doing it. Because to show up every single day with energy as your best authentic self in order to make a difference, in order to dig deep and get the truth out and share it with people, you have to have joy, or else you're going to burn out. And if you find yourself where you're starting to get grumpy, you're starting to get resentful or not want to show up and do the work, or not be excited about doing the work and feeling overwhelmed with everything, then it's important to self-reflect and understand why. But there is a reason not many people are able to get through and be a commercially successful artist. And that's because it just requires a tremendous amount of work, not just in terms of making the records and marketing the records, but in terms of self-reflection and showing up every day as the artist. And something a dear friend of ours, who you guys will probably meet one day soon, his name's Paul Famous. He's a great artist whisperer and songwriter. He always says is, you can tell an artist is a star when they make you feel good about yourself. And that is ultimately your job as an artist, is to make, you're so settled in yourself and your self-worth and self-respect and the joy of what you're doing, that when you're around other people, whether it's the person working at catering, the electrician, or the producer, or the songwriter, or the A&R executive, you make them feel good about themselves. And I know this personally. Like, that was the thing about Harry Styles. Like, if it was someone serving tea, he made them feel like a star. He made me feel like a star. And it's because he really loved what he was doing. He woke up every day excited to do what he was doing. And the best artists that have lived by that, Taylor Swift is another great example. So I think those points of being joyful, being authentic, self-respect, self-expression, all work hand in hand, and then will allow you to make a difference.
I think that's really great. I think we should, for the sake of time, move on to Q&A, please. And then if what would be great is if you guys share the people that we didn't call on right now, is like share what you were going to say and in the chat, and we can all respond to that virtually.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much, everyone who shared. Don't forget to please upload your worksheets to the Google Drive. It's in step. And now we just have a Q&A segment. Remaining questions on any of the information that was shared in the presentation, on the values. Now's your time.
It can be handwritten, right? Because I write everything with my handwriting. It's okay?
Yeah, if you
Okay.
wrote the values in your notebook or something, as long as we have a picture of it in the drive, that's perfect.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Questions for Tamar or Alex? Tamima?
Yes, hi. How are you?
Hi, good.
Just a quick question about the 100% that is 200%. Like, I didn't get that. It's complicated about that 50% is somehow, like, I didn't understand how if I get 100% from the 50%, 25% is for the A&R. Like, can we elaborate on that?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, it's like the 50% will be the.
So the recording industry, and Nikisha, I know you're still here, so if I misspeak on anything, Nikisha's more specialized in this than I am, but the recording industry has split up the value of a song into two distinct segments. One is the actual audio recording. So you're talking about the file of what has made it onto the record, whether it's the combination of bass, vocals, guitar, everything. It's the master recording. When that is distributed, there is a value to it, and that's your master, and you get your master royalties from that. So when a song, and I'm only focusing on streaming because this could be in an entire 5-hour course on the details of royalties and how they work. So when your song is streamed on Spotify, then one thing that is being consumed and paid for is that master recording. The audio is being streamed by someone else. The other thing that has value is what's called the copyright or the composition. And that is what people define as the lyrical and melodic framework of what is presented. So a song, a cover is a great example. A cover isn't the same audio recording as the original, but it is the same song as the original. So if you cover a song, you as the person that made the cover will make money on the master because you made a new audio recording. You cut your own vocals on it, you cut a new drum part, a new bass part. However, the song, the lyric, and the melody is someone else's. And so they will get paid on that. So what the industry has done is split, when a song is streamed, they've split the royalties between what goes to the master and what goes to the composition. Now, for the sake of the discussion, I said it was an even split. That is not the case. It is complicated. And I don't want to get into the details of, okay, it's 60% to the master, 40% to the composition, et cetera, et cetera. But for the sake of it, we're going to say it's 50-50. So the reason Tamar mentioned the 200% is because one organization collects the master royalty. And when they're collecting that, they say that money is 100% of what they make. And then they dictate to you what percentage of the master you are getting. So, and then the other section of it, the composition, it goes to a publishing company, and they say that money is 100% of what is being made because they're only thinking about the composition. So if a song streams and in total between master and publishing, it makes $100, in this case study, $50 goes to the master, to the label, and they're calling that 100% of the revenue. And then $50 goes to the publisher, that's the composition share, and they say that's 100%. And the reason that's important is because when you sign an indie label deal and it's a 50-50 deal with the label, you know that your song streamed a certain amount of times and made a total of $100, $50 goes to the label, and then they're saying that's 100%. So $50 is the total now, and you have a 50-50 deal with them. So you're going to get half of that $50. You're going to get $25. And then you can do the math on the publishing side as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, better. Definitely.
Okay.
Thanks.
It is very complicated. Been in this industry for a long time, and it's also ever changing, and people are fighting for different percentages. It is a very confusing topic. But if you understand that basic framework, it's easier to tell where the money's coming from. And another way to look at this is you don't have to think of the $100 being made from a Spotify stream. You can just say, okay, I know the label is collecting this much and I get 50% of that. I know the publisher is collecting this much and I get 85% of that. And you look at those numbers. You don't have to do the math of what Spotify makes, because Spotify also takes their percentage off the top. If we start getting into that, it turns into a full math equation. Cool.
Next question, all good?
Yeah.
All right. Mona.
Oh, I was raising my hands and I forgot to lower it down. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
All good. Sarah? Sarah, did you have I think you're muted.
Might be frozen.
Maybe frozen. Noran, do you have a question?
Hi, Hannah. Yes, I do.
Great. Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Great. So it's Nuran. I have a question. I want to ask, is it better for a small artist to get signed to an indie label first before getting signed to a major label, or does it not matter in the greater scheme of things?
Tamar, do you want to take that or should I give it a stab?
I mean, I don't know. I think it depends.
It depends. And the industry is changing. If you had asked me this 5 years ago, it would have been a different answer. If you had asked it 10 years ago, it would have been an entirely different answer. There are
Can we say what it would have been 10 years ago? Because I think that is important to, like 10, 15 years ago, signing to a major was the only way.
Yeah.
Only way. Because they controlled everything. Their streaming wasn't the great equalizer. Or TikTok wasn't the great equalizer. And the major labels and the executives at those major labels pulled every single string. They would sign an artist and they would be like, this artist is going to be huge. And then they would put all of the money into that person and make them big. It doesn't work like that anymore. And you can be incredibly successful and make a lot of money being an artist that's doing this independently, signed to an independent label. Alex and I yesterday, who were we talking to? I don't know who we were talking to, but there are like 3-4 artists right now that we really admire, big, and who are signed to an indie label that distributes through a distributor that we work with. That's it, you know? So I think it depends. I think it depends.
So just to give I think this historical context is touching on what Tamar said. Major labels controlled everything. Streaming came in. That changed the power balance. And then social media came in, which took a lot of power away from streaming companies and major labels. And they found that artists could create social profiles on their own and influence their sales numbers without the help of major labels. However, major labels have caught up and they have bought up companies and they still do have significant control over a certain amount of success. So where things currently stand, the way our personal opinion it sits on this matter is distributors that take even a smaller percentage and indie labels are better set up to take an artist from 0 to 1, to get that initial fan base, to get it so you're making some money, so you can play some shows, and you have gone through the development process, so it's very clear what you're saying and why you're saying it. So an artist that you listen to their Spotify, it's cohesive, the branding makes sense. You go to their TikTok, their Instagram, everything is saying the same thing. The messaging is clear. You go to their show, it's the artist that you've been hoping to see because you've been following them. That development process takes time. And you can get the resources to do that by signing to a distributor or an independent label. At a certain point, indie labels can take you to the next level. So some of them that have the funding where you're selling out theaters, 2,000 people in each or 5,000 people in each city you go to. And you have hundreds of millions of streams instead of tens of millions of streams. And you have 1 million followers on socials. Labels, major labels can open the doors to that type of funding and to radio promotion and TV opportunities and those bigger like things that make someone a star, like a global star. They still have the keys to that kingdom, but it doesn't mean that others can't do it. They're just really good at it still. So we do advise to build on your own, get the manager, then distributor or indie, and then there will be a certain point, if you're hitting those numbers, you won't have to go looking. The majors are going to come knocking. They have a trigger. When they see a certain amount of daily streams on Spotify, they come and they will approach you. Hope that answers.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much.
Of course. Sandra, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi. You can hear me?
Yes,
Or-
yes, all good.
Okay. So earlier, when you guys were talking about the artists having to network, you mentioned that we should attend virtual industry events if we don't have enough industry events happening here locally. Do you have any virtual industry events that you could recommend? Or that happen that we could attend maybe?
Tamar,
I
what-
know from my side, just me browsing LinkedIn. Women in Music is a global organization that has a ton of virtual industry events. You can sign up for their newsletters through their website, and they email you once a month with all of the virtual events that they have in their calendar for that month. They're a wonderful organization. We work with them all. I'm happy to share that website with you guys in WhatsApp right after this. The Recording Academy also does virtual events. Music Makers does virtual events. I'll send these in the chat as well. Yeah, women in music.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Music Forward. Yep. And Nvak also. We do virtual events outside of, but of course I will share with you guys.
Okay, we'll be attending for sure.
Any others, Alex or Tamar, from your list?
Not off the top of my head, but I think, Hannah, let's put this in the category of the attorney research too. And this is going to take time, but by the end of this course, we will get you guys a comprehensive list, because we're also learning what is available in Egypt and not. And this will unfold as we continue to communicate with you guys, and we'll start pulling in some remote assistance as we go along. Okay. Sarah, you have, I think, can you hear us now? Yeah. Okay. Let's.
Hi. I'm Sherry, by the way. I'm not Sarah. This is my sister's laptop.
Oh, okay.
Okay, well, I'm having a hard time really understanding the difference between the publisher, the distributor, and the record label. I know I should have asked this earlier, but I don't know why I haven't asked this yet. Because I sometimes I think it's a very obvious question, but I can't really understand the difference.
It's not, it is confusing.
Really? Okay, they're good.
So what I had mentioned earlier is that all of this boils down to that distinction between the two monetizable aspects of a song, of a record. There is the master and the composition. Like I mentioned before, the master is the actual audio recording. And the thing that made this click for me is that example of what happens when someone covers a song. So let's say Cruel Summer by Taylor Swift. The master recording is the actual audio of the production, the drums, the vocals, the recording of all of those elements, and then distributed by the label. If you went and decided that you're going to cover that song and record your own acoustic guitar, your own vocal, and then upload that to Spotify, you will collect the master royalty from that cover. However, there's a separate royalty that's called the composition, and that has to do with the lyric and melody and the chords of the song. That money will go back to Taylor and whoever wrote the song.
Okay.
So this distinction is kind of hard to process, but the actual audio recording and then the composition are separate.
And the composition is also called the copyright. That is another word that you will hear a lot, and it's referring to the same thing. Composition, copyright is the same thing.
What about the original aspect? Like if I'm uploading an original song.
Yeah, so then you would have ownership over both the master and the copyright, because you wrote the copyright, you wrote the lyric, the melody, the chords, and then you also recorded it and uploaded it.
However, a distributor would get a cut of your master. A independent label would get a cut of your master if you decide to work with an independent, or if you decide to work with a distributor, or a major label would get a cut of your master recording if you decide to work with a major label. So someone's always getting a cut of your master. It just depends on what the percentage is. If you're working with a distributor will get a cut. It'll be a very, very small portion. If you're working with an indie, an independent will likely get half. And if you're working with the major will most likely get, not even most likely, the major label will get the largest share of your master.
Now, that's the difference. So labels, major labels, independent labels, and distributors all operate on this vertical of the master recording. That is what they collect money from. Publishers only deal with the composition and the copyright.
Oh,
So
okay.
there are two main jobs for a publisher. One, and the thing that they're the best at, and really the only thing you can rely on them for, is collecting the money for the composition or the copyright. It is a big job to go out and every time that song is streamed in any place around the world to ensure that it's categorized and that you are getting the money for that. The other thing that publishers often help with is setting you up in situations where you can make more compositions, write more songs. So they've often adopted this role of connecting you with other songwriters, artists, producers, because their whole job and the way they make money is by releasing more songs. And so a publisher loves it when someone covers another person's songs, because now they can collect on that composition with a new master recording. So yeah, go ahead.
So isn't that the A&R have the same scope of work? Like it falls under the role of A&R, right?
There are A&Rs at labels and there are A&Rs at publishing companies.
Okay.
And they both do the same thing, but one focuses on the master and one focuses on the copyright. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
If it doesn't, keep asking, because we'll keep explaining, because you're not the only one that doesn't understand. I guarantee like there are like 15 other people in this room that are confused and they're just,
Yeah, it's just very complicated.
Yes.
Like I get what you're saying. It's just very, I don't know. It's very complicated.
I'm going to give one more just kind of example. And I think to simplify it, we're going to forget about splitting into major, indie, or distributor. They're all the same thing. They're all dealing with the master. An A&R that is dealing with the creation and distribution of music on the label side, their job is to finalize a record that is in line with the marketing strategy of the record label. So they're focused on like, okay, what is it going to take to get this artist to make the best music possible that we can complete, we can package, and we can sell. On the publishing side, they're more about volume, like how do we get our songwriters? They don't all like, they sign artists as well because artists write music, but they deal with songwriters and producers too. And they want to get a high volume of copyright of songs made, of lyrics and melodies written. So they are more dealing with the creation and the spark, setting up rooms, making sure songs are being made. And at a certain point, once a high quality of song is being made and an artist wants to record it, then the A&R from the record label may jump in and say, hey, I really like this song that the A&R from the publisher helped make, and I want to take it to the next level. So they'll pull in a producer and they'll finish the production, and then they'll get it to the place where they can actually mix and master it, which we'll get into, and distribute it. So they're similar roles, but they just deal with slightly different steps in the process.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, but the most confusing thing, and it takes it's just this weird switch in your brain when you realize what a master recording is versus what a copyright or a composition is.
Hello, can I add to her question?
Yes, yeah.
I think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, the publishers is not really
in our culture. I don't think a lot of artists deal with publishers here. I think in Egypt we normally deal with distributors, be it companies in Egypt, local companies, or some artists they use DistroKid. So I think most of us here do not understand like what are publishing companies and what are they responsible for. And as an artist, should I seek out a publishing company as well as a distribution? Like I'm signed to a distribution company, but I've never heard of I need to sign with a publisher and send them my lyrics or my or the flows I make or the melodies I make. Like I think we do not understand what a publishing company does and if that exists here in our country.
Great. Okay, so and I'm just looking at the
one
chat
thing
right
one thing I just want to say, because just looking at time, what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to set up a separate session for publishing, because I think that publishing is something, it's important. We understand that it's something that doesn't necessarily exist in Egypt. It is something that is very, very, very important. So I think what we'll do is we're going to try and slot in a lesson on publishing, and we'll have like 2 publishing executives come and discuss a bunch of different topics on the topic.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because I do know that even, yes, if you're working with a distributor or DistroKid, then they can collect the master, but you are entitled to copyright even if the publishing entity does not exist in Egypt. So if it's not working with them in Egypt, there are other ones you can reach out to outside of Egypt that will be able to go and find your money for you. So we do, at this point, it is like Tamar said, we should pull in actual publishers who can really dive into the details and may understand the process of growth in your market and what, because I know if major publishers don't exist there yet, they're thinking about expanding into Egypt, and we can give you guys more details on that.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah. Should we take one more?
Yeah, there's, I think, 2 more. We can take Sahar's and Rola's questions, and then I think we can call it.
I'm sorry, can I answer Nada's question here?
Yeah, please.
Sorry, question. Okay, guys, so let me talk about the labels or the distributions here in Egypt. So for example, we have Takween, we have Warner, we have Universal that are now available in Egypt. I'm sorry for the outside noise. So regarding these, I can speak for these companies, because when you sign with them, they can, in the contract, they can sign you for distribution, they can sign you for production, and they can handle your publishing rights as well. So for example, my contract with Warner, it has the 3, and Takween is able to do that. I'm not sure if Empire is capable of doing that, but I think so as well. And in the case, if you sign with a distribution or sign with a company as a distribution, with distribution only, do email them and do try to get more information about publishing, because they will usually have that section. And there are, I'm not sure, I will ask for the names, but there are also ways that you can get your publishing separately. But this is very important, ladies. So I'll do my best to also like try to find the right names. But the big companies that offer your distribution, yani Takween, which is the most of the artists signs with Takween because they don't have that much requirements and they hunt a lot of talent. And for example, Universal and Warner and Qanawat, all of these, they can have a publishing agreement and handle your publishing within Egypt or within your contract, sorry. So that's it, sorry.
Thank you for explaining, Hala. I'm excited to dig into this further. I think we're uncovering a really important thing because it does seem to be relatively vague, and the fact that it's buried in the contract is interesting and something we can teach you guys how to dig out. For the sake of time, let's go to Rola, and then we'll go to Sahar, and then we will call it for today.
Hi guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
First of all, thank you so much for today. It was so insightful and just very good. My question was about the example you used for Rosa, the Sting and Lumineers thing. As a manager, how do you find a good balance between like artistic integrity and commercial success? Because what if, for example, Rosa, she keeps insisting, like you said, your advice, and that she should still go with this for a while before she shifts. But what if she just doesn't want to? What is the good balance or compromise that should be reached?
Great question.
Really, really good question.
Do you want to answer it, Alex?
I'll start, and then I know you're going to have a lot to add to it. But Rola, so it's our job to advise, and it's our job to make extremely clear what are the benefits and the downfalls of certain decisions that she's making, and to lay it out and say it like it is.
It's also our job to persuade.
Yeah.
And persuade when we feel like like when we feel like the artist is going to make a mistake. It's our job to prevent the artist from making the mistake. And it is our job to persuade the artist to listen and to be careful and to lay out the pros and the cons of the decisions that they may or may not be making.
And we had this conversation with Rosa yesterday, and it's exactly what you said. Ultimately, the decision is hers. We can't force her to do anything, but what she said, which was smart, is I need to try everything and basically listen to you guys before I get to a point where I'm just going to say, screw it, I'm doing my thing. And she understood that she would be making an irrational decision by implementing that power at this moment in time when she hasn't developed enough skills or experience in the music industry to really know what she's talking about. And it takes time. It takes so much time. So it is a dance, and it can get heated. But it is just constant communication. And the amount of times we've had this conversation with her, I can't even count anymore, but it's our job to repeat it and to persuade and to persuade. And just be very clear. Something that came up too is not being mean, but not tiptoeing and saying it like it is. And other ways that this, what I mentioned earlier about getting other people to listen to the music and give their input. You can pull in people and get external input. At a certain point, managers do become like parents. We all know that your parents might say something a million times and it doesn't click for you until you hear it from someone else. And that is very common too, where, we're saying something and then her lawyer or a friend or something says the exact same thing. And then she's like, oh, I get it now. We're like, oh my God. But that's part of the job.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Sahar, do you want to take the last one?
Yeah, I have a quick question. If an artist already signed with a distribution and already have tracks out there on audio platforms, and now like knowing what should be happening regarding signing into a pro or with a label. So my question here is, after I sign with a pro, as a publisher too, because I'm the writer of the song, for instance, and the song is already out there. Is any reality gonna be collected from the previous streamings
Yes.
and plays?
Yes.
Yeah.
I personally have multiple records out there that are unpublished right now. When we bring the publisher, we can ask for the exact timeline, but those royalties on the publishing side will always be available to you, that can be collected after the fact. You don't want them sitting there for a decade for sure, but songs that are out already, you can claim and you can collect. It's a process, but you're not losing those royalties by not having your publisher or PRO set up now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And then I have a question regarding the situation. Rosa, when you said it wasn't a smart move to change genres as a music producer, is it a bad thing to work on different genres, or should I stick to one? Totally different. Yes. You should be versatile. You should produce all sorts of different genres, 100%. At a certain point, you do want to be known for something, and it can help to have a specific lane that you're really good at. For example, my career, I'm really good at rock and bands and indie rock, and it just made things simpler where I wasn't going to all the A&Rs. I was going to the rock A&Rs, and I was looking for bands, and it allowed me to just dominate a specific genre, and it's what I was naturally good at. But I know a good friend of mine can produce so many different genres, and they just set up their career where they're able to produce multiple things, and it keeps them fresh. And they like doing it that way. So it's really just up to your specific talents, but is not the same as an artist.
Guys, one thing I just want to say prior to ending this session with you guys today, first and foremost, like, this was so fun. I hope you guys had as much fun as we did. It's just like, it's so great to get to do this with you guys, and it's so great to get to know you guys. One thing I do want to stress that's really important here. I know in the chat, you guys have been saying if you guys are going to be late or if you guys are sick and you can't show up. But one thing I really want to stress is that everybody who's putting time into this from our side, we're putting our time, energy, we're putting a lot into this, right? So it would be wonderful if you guys show up on time. And if you can't show up on time, it's about respect, right? And like, be respectful by showing up on time. If you're going to be late, you have to let us know. I really want to put that out there, because I do see some people coming late, and you know, it's just important for you guys to be respecting the amount of energy and time that we're putting into this ourselves by showing up and being your best self and being present and asking questions and participating. So I just wanted to say that prior to us ending, because I think as we dive deeper into this, just show up and be your best self, please.
And I'll add to that and just say it's a direct reflection of how you handle your career too. And yes, sometimes you're going to be late, but communication is everything. You'll be surprised if you do something and you don't have control over it, and it can end up just seeming weird. But if you communicate ahead of time, it can completely change the tone of that experience. So let us know if you're going to be late. We're really, we hold ourselves to a high standard, and we will hold you guys to a high standard as well, or else we wouldn't be doing our job. So yeah, it's very, very important. But to second Tamar as well, this was a blast. This was the first time I've been able to teach and be a part of this, and I knew I was going to enjoy it, but I'm just blown away by you guys and your questions and insights. So excited to keep it going and meet you all.
I'm just jealous that you get to meet them next week.
Oh, I can't wait.
Ugh.
Love it. Okay, everyone.
Thank you guys. And I just want to say a reminder, homework was sent to your email. I will also send the 2 homework sheets to WhatsApp. You can upload them to the same Google Drive folder that was shared in the chat, WhatsApp, and email. If you have any issues at all, please don't hesitate to reach out. And the homework is meant to guide you in your own artist projects. It's there to help you. And we do review it and take note of who turns it in. So just a little reminder there. And then I want to say a huge thank you to Alex and Tamar for sharing your time and your insight with us and taking 3 hours out of your Wednesday. We know you're super busy, so just thank you again. And you will be getting to know both of them very well over the course of this program. Alex will be with you guys for the production unit next week. Super excited. And Tamar, of course, is in all the chats, will be on all of these masterclasses. She's always around. And also both Alex and Tamar are the ones that will be listening to your music that you submit during the A&R feedback phase throughout the program. So please, we're all here as a resource, and this is just the first of many times you're getting to meet with them. So thank you guys for attending, for staying till the end, and all the things. I'll be uploading this session as soon as I hit end meeting. So
thank you.
That's it.
Thanks, Anna, for organizing. Anna crushed it too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you all. Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.